Hey everyone, welcome to Keto and Crime and Thought Crime. Today we've got the final Chad Daybell book I will ever have to read, unless his miserable ass rots one in prison. But anyway, we've got the final book in the Chad Daybell Emma Trilogy, Escape to Zion. Though after I read this, I'm not sure if it's an escape or a punishment, but we're going to talk about it. And if continuity was bad before, it's on a whole other level now. So let's get into it. Escape to Zion, Chad Daybell. Give me strength. And as always, this video is brought to you by our brand new full channel partner, Keto Crisp. The wonderful folks over at tastecando.com have officially signed on to partner with me in both my weight loss journey, which I am back on now, as well as sponsoring the channel. They have signed me up for a brand new affiliate program. So if you click the link down below, as well as put in my discount code, you'll receive 15% off your first order, and I do get a tiny commission if you do purchase. So it helps the channel and you get something tasty and healthy. These are great bars. They satisfy. They keep you full for a long time. They have a lot of great nutrients, a lot of great natural ingredients. And for those of us in the keto and low carb world, we've often been demonized as a not a friend to the animals, but these are 100% plant-based. So you can feel good about that too if you are of the vegetarian or vegan keto lifestyle. These are also for you. So with that being said, I want to say a huge shout out to Keto Crisp for sponsoring the channel and helping me to stay on the air here. And thank you all. So if you'd like to order some, definitely check them out below. I appreciate it. Okay. First thing I want to say, this was one of the longer of the novels. This was just over 200 pages, about 241 to be exact. 40 something chapters, so you can do the math to see that that's not very long chapters for 40. But basically, as I have said in many of these videos, I believe particularly the character of Doug, if you've read or listened to any of my summaries of the Standing on Holy Ground or this Emma trilogy, I have said many times, I believe Doug is Chad. And this was confirmed in the prologue to this book, which I found out this series, there was some conflict about whether this was written first and published last, but evidently this was first published around 2010 and then a republication in 2019. I don't know if they did it in anticipation of everything that's going on, thinking they could sell a few of these, but this is evidently the second publishing of that. So, but this was confirmed that yes, the character of Doug is Chad, as is his talk about the ancestors of this family, the Dalton family, is talking about his own family. So, got it right, y'all. We know him so well that he cannot help but put himself into the center of attention. But so basically, if you'll recall, when the last novel, Doug's Dilemma, tapered off, he had basically come back from fighting in World War II with his great grandfather or great grandfather, and Emma had married Tad, who is a descendant of the boy she fell in love with when she went back in time and met Brigham Young in the gang. And so now, before the events of Standing in Holy Places happens, there's this book. And basically, so we have Emma and Tad driving along their merry way, and they get into a car wreck. There's something about car accidents in Chad Daybell. I don't know what it's just like sandwiches. I don't know what it is, but he really loves talking about those sorts of things. But anyway, they wreck. She wakes up. She's in the future. Another time jump. A time jump by reference of something unusual. Something. She fell in a river. She fell off a cliff. She jumped through a bridge. She had a car wreck. She's in the future. Instead of going in the past, it's the future. And so she's in Salt Lake City, what she ganders to be about 30 years in the future. And she's in front of a sign, and it says Salt Lake Gladiators versus the Las Vegas Lounge Lizards. The battle begins at 7 p.m., brought to you by Conquest, making your dreams come true. So if you hung on with me during Standing in Holy Places, there was this whole replacement for all the sports. And the name of the local Salt Lake City team was the Grizzlies. And now that's the Gladiators. Chad can't remember his own continuity. I'm going to dock him 10 points here. My good friend Kat, I know you're out there. Her and I have this running joke about the Grizzlies. Yeah, he shortchanged us. So remember, it's not the Grizzlies, it's the Gladiators. Anyway, so it's clearly some professional sport that needs to be played, that is being played. Now, she starts to remember what happened to her and Tad, that she had picked him up at his accounting office and they were driving home. He was driving. They had switched drivers because I guess women can't drive. And she had been riding when they got into this car wreck. And I remember from Standing in Holy Places, yes, Tad North, her husband, was indeed an accountant. So he got that right. And she looks around, looks at what appears to be a dilapidated Salt Lake City, and actually has thought, is this another errand? Yes, girl. It's another errand. It's on like Donkey Kong. You've been driven into outer darkness again. It's just on like Donkey Kong. So yes, another freaking errand. Okay, so then some people, namely a girl with purple hair, comes out and tries to rob her. She runs to the Mormon temple. Now, he does point out that at this point, there's no electricity anywhere in Salt Lake City due to certain events. So what we gander is the events that took place in times of turmoil and Standing in Holy Places, the whole collapse of society has happened, and she's somewhere in the midst of that before that story takes over. So no electricity. She doesn't know what's happened, but she does start to climb an electric fence because she thinks, oh, no electricity in the city, therefore no electricity in this electric fence. No, church has electricity, and it blasts her unconscious. And instead of waking up back in her time, she wakes up with some dude named Brother Nelson who's shaking her awake, and he knew her brother Doug. So again, old Double D Doug to the rescue. He then explains it's indeed 14 or 20 so years. They can't make up their mind here. In the future, she asks about the gladiators, and she says, he says yes. Basically, when the economy fell due to droughts and famines and that deadly flu that was released on everybody, and the economy fell apart, they tried to revitalize it by having everybody take the chip and giving everybody rebates. And for a while, the economy did good, and then it collapsed again. So all pro sports went out of business, and they started with this whole new Conquest leagues, which is basically teams of 9 men and 9 women. And they basically fight to the death in a gladiator style combat. So this is like American Gladiators on steroids, where what we talked about in the previous Standing in Holy Places series is some sort of like really rough arena football. everybody makes it out alive. Not in this. So maybe that's the reason for the non-continuity. It's just a vision of what could happen instead of what actually happened. But I don't try to get that far into Daybell's psyche or how he writes, if you can call it that. So anyway, 9 men, 9 women. So at least Chad's all about equality in some things. And then after 30 minutes, the team with the most people still alive wins. They also, instead of concessions, they sell steel marbles that the fans can hurl at the players to try to take them out. And then fights always erupt out in the stands, and people die in the stands, and the government just allows this because population control. I don't get it either, but we're talking about Chad Daybell here. So anyway, he's telling her all about this. And then he said, "What? As horrified as you are about that, given what's actually on television nowadays with all the sex and stuff, this is actually family entertainment." He says that it's really all that there is left unless you want to look at what's basically softcore porn now on television. And lots of the television networks went out of business, so because of the economy, and really the only thing that's fit to watch is the church-owned television station, where I'm sure they're showing Superbook or Flying House or something. But Veggie Tales. Sorry. We gotta ask the L Mom, is there a Mormon equivalent to Veggie Tales or Davy and Goliath, if y'all remember that? It was an old Presbyterian church that, anyway, I'm way off topic. Anyway, he then tells her about the flu and all the natural disasters, and then talks about, the Savior's second coming can't be more than a few months away. Then he takes her in, introduces her to everyone else that's held up in the Salt Lake City temple, and they watch TV. The Mormon-owned station didn't say what they watched. Let's just say it was Superbook or something. And then he talks about the wars, how the Israelis were fighting off all the many assaults that have hit toward Jerusalem, hit Armageddon, that 300,000 Arab troops, Arab, he says Arab, has stormed the north end of Jerusalem, and they repeatedly held them off. They tell about the chip disease, the call from the churches to go to the white camps and the blue camps, and how some people wanted to go, some people didn't. He specifically talks about the rich. He says a lot of the richest Mormons didn't want to go because of the laws of consecration. Remember all of that and standing in holy places, how everybody lives by the laws of consecration. Everybody puts everything into one pool, and it's divided equally among everyone. It's socialism, communism. So he says a lot of people didn't want to live by those rules, so they didn't choose to go. And now that they've since changed their mind, they are in blue camps somewhere, probably less happy than they would be if they were in white camps, I assume. So, yeah. For as much as Chad Daybell is a social conservative and very anti-government, he's all about the Mormon church controlling everybody, which that doesn't make any sense. If one entity shouldn't control you, then why should another? And why should the same rules apply? Because you're calling it consecration if the church controls you, but it's still communism if the government controls you. But they're doing the same thing. Wake up, Chad. Read a book, not your own, please. And then they talk about old Larry Campbell. Remember him, the one that they killed with the snake? He fell out the window. He was like the big con man that had set himself up as some sort of mock savior and controlled all of Utah from the Capitol building. And so he's around. They're talking about him, how he basically has a whole cult that he lives with the state capitol. So some continuity there. Remember him? They killed him with the snake. Yeah, I block it out too. They called him, of course, Shareem, which was his name in the other novels as well. So again, got to give him credit for sticking to some continuity. And then the Mormons then in the temple tell her that, yeah, a lot of those former rich Mormons actually went and hung out with Shireen because he was against the laws of consecration. So he's for capitalism, the same thing Chad is for in real life. And then they take her to a room where she can rest. She reads a bunch of old newspapers where she reads about all the bad stuff that's happened up until the point that the whole world collapsed, or modern civilization collapsed. She says it seemed to her that they were fiction, but she knew that they were indeed reality. So she hangs out for a while. Oh, her parents are there. She meets her parents, and they're part of this whole thing to, keep society alive by sending food and supplies to the neighboring cities where, people are holed up, you know, in old homes or tents or where have you. So, of course, she joins in with them, and they go to Spanish Fork, where evidently the Mormons have some big food storage thing, and they get some food. And then on their way there, they pass Springville, which we all know Springville, Utah, where they say there's about 1,000 people there. That some people have kind of homesteaded there. They grow their own food. She immediately asks if they can stop. She wants to go find her parents' house. So she runs to what was her home, her parents' house. And when she got there, she hides behind an old rusty yellow Volkswagen was her brother Doug's. It's up on blocks now, and sees a couple of men hanging out on her porch. I don't know why she chose to go look at her old house when her parents are with her, but okay. So for some reason, she decided to go out and address these two men, tells them she grew up there and just wanted to know how long they've been there. He said, we've been here for years since the collapse. We just found it abandoned and decided to live here. And then they try to rob her. And she fights them off with some kerosene. She with some kerosene, lights a match, and fights them off. And it's just would never happen in real life. And then she runs back to her caravan, and they get on it, and they head off to the Spanish Fork, and then from there on to Provo, where they're taking some of the food. They get into the Provo temple, where her parents are immediately said they will be moving there, and they'll be taking on the same job that they have. And then there's a conversation with her and her parents where they tell her about where her brother Doug is. He is a part of the 144,000 priests, where he's gone all over the world to bring the lost tribes home. So that's much the same as it was in Standing on Holy Ground. They also talk about his wife, Becky, who died. And so did their little baby Daniel. Remember Daniel, who was born without an arm and died at a very young age, and there was a little angel that Emma saw in Beyond the Veil. Yeah, all of that. So that's true. But yet Becky, who was still alive at the end of those novels, is now dead. So another continuity error. But then she learned that she had children, 3 of them, and that her new assignment would be helping her mom clean the temple. So men and women can be on sports teams together, but women still got to clean the house. Okay. Anyway, so the big thing here is that Doug's remaining children, 2 of them, have run away, and they're hanging out with the kids at Lincoln Park. Not the good Lincoln Park, Chad Daybell's Lincoln Park. And if you remember those from the other series, they're basically kids who rose up and killed all the adults in town and took over. And they're not living a godly Chad Daybell kind of life. And they want her to go there and see if she, who she's still like, 22, 23 at the time, go there and see if she can get her niece and nephew out of there, and that she'll take some food to trade for them. And so they tell her all about the uprising. It's basically Children of the Corn. Chad watched Children of the Corn and changed some names and locations. How do I know this? Because it's exactly the same plot. The only thing you need is creepy, a child preacher, Isaac, staring in a window, and you've got Children of the Corn. Just say it. It's identical. So, Chad, you weren't very good at disguising that story. The only thing you need is he who walks behind the rose. Anyway, so they put her in a dress. Yes, he went in great detail describing this dress, how it was an antique, Chad. Anyway, and they talk more about World War III, how the flu and how the Chinese and the Russians and all these other countries invaded the U.S. and took them over, but how the Mormons pushed them back, and now they're all serving the Antichrist that we heard about in the last few of Standing in Holy Places. And the United States has kind of been left to its own devices under the control of the Mormon Church. And so they're gearing up for what they know might be another invasion and the second coming of God. So after about 20 pages of exposition that means absolutely nothing, we basically catch up with Emma going to Lincoln Park. And she meets a girl named Tara, who's actually one of the kids, and she agrees to help her find her niece and nephew to get them out. But they are captured by the soldiers of these kids, which most of them are under like 22 years old. And get this, their uniforms are BYU football uniforms, home jersey, blue, everything. So they've broken into the BYU supply store, and that's how shoulder pads, everything, and that is their uniforms. They have guns, they have homemade spears, pretty much apocalyptic type of army. And they start talking about the person they call the Mighty One, who is their leader. His real name is Mo. That's all we know. Yeah, I can't help think about the Three Stooges myself. And so they decide that Emma will be a suitable sacrifice to he who walks behind the rope, whatever god Chad Daybell has them worship. So they decide that she will be a great sacrifice, just like Linda Hamilton in the movie. And the character in Stephen King's short story, just like it. So Emma is put in prison. They take her food, they take her backpack. Tara says she will try to get her out of this. And so anyway, the next day they reassemble at the BYU gym in the pool area, and they have this big ceremony where the Mighty One, or Mo, does this whole incantation about how wonderful it is to have a human sacrifice. Oh, Mo wears Steve Young's number. I'm sure El Mom is falling out of her chair right about now. But anyway, yeah, Steve Young. And they basically throw Emma in the pool. I don't know how long it's been since this thing was chlorinated. So I hope you got all your shots, Emma, before you went on this little mission. And they throw Sammy the Snake. Remember Sammy the Snake, who ends up killing Larry Campbell and the other? Yeah, he's here. And so they throw the snake in there with Emma, and Emma fights the snake. And it wraps all around her, and she chokes him. She just chokes him. I can just see a cartoon with a snake like that. And she gets away. And so now Mo wants to marry her because she choked the snake. I even um, can't even discuss the innuendo in that entire statement. He wants to marry her because she choked the snake, y'all, literally, or she won the battle, hence choked the snake. Anyway, so Tara breaks her out. She finds her niece and her nephew. They all run to Provo and they hide in the temple. And then this whole football army of kids comes and surrounds the temple. But before a battle ensues, Emma, who knows she's what Mo wants because she can choke a snake, basically runs away to avoid this battle, and she actually runs into Mathoni. Remember the Navajo Native American whose entire tribe is actually a lost tribe of Mormonism in Chad Daybell's last series? Yeah, he's there, and he's still driving that same blue Nissan that Chad drove, described in just terrible, terrible detail in the last one. And so he smuggles her into New Jerusalem, where football people can't bother her. And she meets her grown kids and her grandkids. She sees that whole Keys of the Kingdom ceremony that was described in basically the last 3 chapters of this is just it's just an outline for his other book. That's literally all it is. You could just skip the last 3 to 5 chapters and you wouldn't miss a thing, except for her seeing all of that. And then she is driving with him again in the blue Nissan, and he crashes. And then she wakes up back at home, tells her whole story, including Doug, that he's going to meet this wonderful woman named Becky, but she's going to die. She tells her brother that. So anyway, and basically this book ends for them being real happy about the end of the world being like 14 to 21 years away. So what is my decision on this book? Skip it. Do yourself a favor, just skip it. You could just drop this book, read the other 2, and then go on to his other series, and you wouldn't miss a thing. The only thing you would miss is in the last few chapters of the last book of Standing in Holy Ground, he talks about Emma's former mission, which none of the stuff he says there actually really correlates with the adventure we saw her have. So again, he just took some old notes, threw them into a binder, and sold it as a book. That's what happened. And with that, I close the book on Chad Daybell universe, unless he manages to produce another one. But I'm here for you if that happens. And with that being said, thank you so much for joining me and hanging with me during this long trek. I think it's taken me 1.5 years to get through all of these books. Anyway, with that being said, until next time, Keto Krime.